latest reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that trade negotiations with China were stalled, and that hints that President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping might personally intervene to break the deadlock. India's Union Home Minister Amit Shah visits Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch district to meet the families affected by Pakistani shelling, promising support and condemning Islamabad's targeting of civilians. Thousands of Nepali royalists rally in the capital of Kathmandu, calling for the restoration of the monarchy amid growing frustration over corruption, economic stagnation and political chaos in the republic. A private jet carrying Liberian President Joseph Mokaya crash-landed due to a malfunction, forcing the cancellation of all flights at the country's main airport and sparking panic among passengers. And the United Nations is reportedly planning to cut its budget by 20% and eliminate nearly 7,000 jobs, a fallout from a deepening financial crisis fueled by unpaid US dues and aid rollbacks under Donald Trump. Hello and welcome. We start with the civil war in Sudan. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, claim new gains in their 2-year-long war with the army. The RSF says it has captured 2 strategic towns in the war-ravaged nation. The key towns are Debebat in South Kordofan State and Al-Kui in West Kordofan State, near the border with South Sudan. Now, Al-Kui is located around 100 kilometers from Al-Obeid, and it's a major crossroads between Khartoum and the Darfur region. It had briefly been captured by the army earlier this month. Now, as per reports, the RSF is continuing shelling in this area, killing at least 6 people. This RSF advance marks the latest chapter in 2 years of civil war in Africa's 3rd largest country. The war pits the army, led by the de facto ruler General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, against the paramilitary RSF, led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. The conflict has effectively split Sudan in 2. The army controls the center, east and north, and the RSF holds most of Darfur in the west and parts of the south. The war has killed tens of thousands, displaced 13 million, and triggered what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Last week, the military-backed government said it had cleared the last RSF bases in Khartoum state. The army had recaptured the capital city 2 months ago. While fighting is escalating elsewhere in the country, Khartoum remains a major battlefield. Amidst this, the capital now also faces a deepening health crisis. A cholera outbreak has claimed 70 lives this week. More than 2,100 new infections were reported in the last 2 days. Officials say that 89% of patients in isolation centres are recovering, but warn that worsening environmental conditions are fueling a sharp rise in cases. The cholera surge comes weeks after drone strikes blamed on the RSF destroyed water and power infrastructure across Khartoum. The capital now faces a full-scale health emergency. At least 90% of hospitals in the conflict zones are out of service due to the war.
If we calculate the losses in the electricity sector, water plants, and other service facilities like hospitals and other buildings, they exceed millions or billions. They exceed billions of dollars.
Aid agencies warn that without immediate intervention, the situation will deteriorate further. As the rainy season begins next month, it will become difficult for civilians to access humanitarian aid. Sudan's government also faces fresh U.S. sanctions over accusations that its military used chemical weapons last year in its offensive against the RSF. The Foreign Ministry has announced the formation of a national committee to investigate. It also expressed disbelief in the validity of the U.S. administration's accusations. As the crisis deepens, Sudan's 50 million people face grave danger. Nearly half of the population is suffering from severe food insecurity. To make matters worse, a surge in endemic diseases is intensifying the humanitarian situation. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Moses Crispus Okello, a senior researcher at the Horn of Africa Security Program, Institute for Security Studies, and he is joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Alyson.
Now, what is the strategic importance of Dbeba and Alkoi in South and West Kordofan? And how does their capture by the RSF shift the balance of power in the conflict?
Thanks once again, Alyson. As you have stated, the RSF has just a couple of days ago taken debate under Alkoi in South Kordofan as well as West Kordofan, respectively. And these two locations are located very strategically on a main artery that connects Khartoum to the Kordofans to Darfur. So in a way, these captures help the RSF to consolidate its presence in the west of Sudan, and also to facilitate linkages with the other Miseria and tribes fighting alongside the RSF in the southern Kordofan and western Kordofan areas. However, I think it will be important to mention that this conflict has gone back and forth, and it would be too early to say that this new capture creates a significant strategic shift in the conflict.
Right. And with the cholera infections surging and essential infrastructure in Khartoum compromised by RSF drone strikes, what are the immediate and the long-term humanitarian implications for civilians, especially in the conflict zones like the capital and in the Kordofan region?
There is no doubt that the RSF has figured out the strategic value of disabling the city by creating an environment that allows an outbreak of cholera and other waterborne diseases. And this is, in the short term, quite significant. We're seeing quite a bit of deaths already in the hundreds every week, and there's a likelihood that this will continue. As you mentioned, if the rains come, and if they come very hard, we can only see a rapid a spread of this disease on top of the other humanitarian concerns that are already in Sudan. So this new development, this outbreak of cholera, layers over the conflict and complicates what is already a dire situation in Sudan, and will definitely add to the death toll of the conflict in general.
Yes. And Moses, given the proximity of these contested towns to South Sudan, what are the potential regional ramifications of the RSF's territorial gains, particularly in terms of cross-border tensions, refugee flows, and, of course, the risk of conflict spilling over?
Right, Alyson. The two areas that the RSF has recently captured are quite in close proximity to the border of South Sudan, a country which is already reeling under its own conflict, incidentally located pretty close to the Kordofans, where this new development is taking place. So there is no doubt that given the porous borders, there's going to be a degree of overlap between the two conflicts, which will certainly strain the already bad relationship between Juba and Port Sudan. And this is one of those kind of developments that, if not checked very soon, might very easily morph into something slightly bigger and perhaps suck in Ethiopia or communities on the Ethiopian border, which lie slightly to the east of these new developments. So this is worsens South Sudan's economic crisis, in that it puts the oil and danger. So there is a likelihood of a deterioration in the pumping of oil, which already has been disturbed by the drone strike that we saw in Port Sudan sometime last week.
Yes. Moses, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and analysis.
Thank you, Alyson.
Next, we look into a story from Kenya. A political satire has become a crime scene. The case has gotten Kenya talking and laughing, but also worried. We will try to decode, where does satire cross the line into criminality? Now, according to the Kenyan government, it's when you post a fake caption claiming the president is dead. That's right, and it is true. A 24-year-old university student is facing legal trouble. His name is David Mokaya. Now, he is standing trial for killing President William Ruto on social media. No, President Ruto is very much alive. What this student did was he posted a photo of a funeral online and captioned it, "President William Ruto's body leaves a Lee funeral home." Now, this led to his arrest last year. Yes, it was a joke, and yes, it was a satire, not a literal death announcement. But then the Kenyan government didn't laugh. They charged David Mukaya for spreading false information. His lawyer said this was an attack on free speech and defended his client by saying people are free to express their political opinions.
Was inordinately charged with the publication of false information. This is under Section 21, Subsection 1 of the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. And what we are currently facing is an abuse, or rather an attack on freedom of expression, on which our client was taking the right in his own essence as a citizen of Kenya to express his political opinions, express political satire, express his feelings, and in most essence also criticize the head of state in this particular matter.
The case was quickly adjourned to the 31st of July, but it's part of a much bigger story. Kenya has been getting increasingly hostile toward critics, especially since last year's anti-tax protests. Those demonstrations swept Kenya, It killed as many as 60 people, and dozens more were abducted in the weeks that followed. In December of 2023, at least 5 people reportedly went missing. Several Kenyans, including cartoonists and content creators, have gotten trouble. Some people also shared AI images of Ruto in a coffin. All of them got into trouble. Now, what was the common thread in this crackdown? It's the same. Some satire, a bit of humor, and some jokes about the president. One of those who was picked out was Gideon Kibet, better known as Kibet Bull. He is a popular cartoonist. Now, he disappeared for days and reappeared, and after that, he promptly announced that he would stop drawing President William Ruto. Rights groups say a shadowy unit, which is a part of intelligence and counter-terrorism agencies, is responsible for the abductions, meaning a secret state-backed group. They were being blamed. However, the government has denied such allegations. But in a rare moment of honesty earlier this month, Ruto sort of, maybe, took responsibility. He said, and I'm quoting, "All the people who were abducted have been brought back. I have instructed that nothing of the nature will happen again." We'll leave it for you to decide if Ruto stuck to his promise. In a country where the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, the government seems to have its rulebook, where you are free to speak as long as it's not funny. And now on to Kenya's neighbor, Uganda. President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power for nearly 4 decades, stood side by side with his wife to publicly apologize to citizens. But why now? And what does it really mean? Now, the Musevenis spoke at a national evangelical convention and organized by their daughter, Pastor Patience Rabawogo. And in front of crowds, the President and the First Lady together delivered what is being called a prayer of repentance. And this is what they had to say. "We acknowledge that we're human. We have made mistakes in one way or another. Forgive us, O Lord." Now, the couple said that they take full responsibility for government failures, from negligence to corruption, and even the alienation of citizens. But this wasn't just a general apology. There was a clear target audience. The Buganda region. Now, Buganda is one of Uganda's most influential political and cultural areas. It's a region that has been growing colder toward the president in recent years. The First Lady acknowledged that the government had sidelined grassroots supporters in Uganda, and she said that there has been marked negligence and lack of diligence. Now, many grassroots supporters have become angry and often feel neglected or forgotten. So why the change of tone? Uganda does go to the polls next year, and many see this public apology as a strategic move, not a spiritual one. For the uninitiated, Museveni has ruled since 1986. That's almost 40 years of rule. He came to power after leading a bush war against the former dictator Milton Obote. Now, Buganda, a key political region in Uganda, helped Museveni get there. But he has been criticized for clinging to power. He amended the constitution to remove term limits and crack down on opposition voices. In 2009, violent clashes broke out after the government blocked the king of Uganda from visiting parts of his own kingdom. And that move triggered riots and left 30 people dead. This was the major turning point, after which relations started to sour. Since then, the Uganda region has leaned toward the opposition. Let's not forget Ugandan pop star turned activist Bobi Wine, and he comes from the heart of Uganda. And just a few years ago, he gave Museveni one of the toughest election challenges he ever faced. He ran in the 2021 presidential polls and secured the second position. He has announced his candidacy for the 2026 election too. That's probably why Museveni is in damage control mode. Some say this apology would only mean something if he were planning to step down. Others say it's too little, too late. But political analysts believe this is a clear attempt to win back Uganda ahead of the 2026 general elections, since the region was once a strong support base. But is that one sorry going to be enough? We'll keep track of the developments. And our last story today is from Nigeria, where heavy rains have unleashed deadly floods, claiming dozens of lives. Flash floods triggered by torrential rains have swept through parts of central Nigeria. The death toll has risen to at least 36, and many more are still missing. The tragedy has unfolded in the city of Mokaya, in Nigeria's central Niger state. More than 50 homes have been destroyed due to the floods. Rescue operations are underway as dozens of families have been left homeless overnight. The flash floods followed hours of non-stop rainfall that overwhelmed riverbanks and local drainage systems. The disaster strikes Nigeria during the annual rainy season, which usually stretches from May to November. Although flooding is common during the season, officials say that this level of damage at the start of the monsoon is unusual and also worrying. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency has warned of heavy rains and potential flash floods in other states as well. Nigeria's flooding crisis is often worsened by a lack of infrastructure. In many areas, drainage systems are either blocked or non-existent. Additionally, the building of homes on natural waterways along the widespread dumping of waste into open drains intensifies the impact of heavy rains. In the past few years, floods have devastated communities across Nigeria. Last year alone, over 1,200 people were killed and more than 1.2 million others were displaced in at least 31 of the country's 36 states. The destruction included over 3.5 million acres of farmland, further deepening food insecurity. Floods in 2022 were similarly catastrophic, killing over 500 people and forcing hundreds of thousands from their homes. Nigeria's rural and urban communities continue to struggle with climate-related disasters, often without adequate resources or preparedness. The situation in Niger State is particularly dire. The region is already battling multiple security threats from Islamist insurgents to armed bandit gangs that attack villages, loot homes, and kidnap residents for ransom. The combination of violence, poverty, and natural disasters has left millions across the region vulnerable and in need of urgent support. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.